Hello there and welcome back to another video here on Wristwatch Revival. My name is Marshall. Thank you so much for coming along. This time on the bench, we have a really special watch. This is a Heuer Carrera from the early 1960s. And this is the watch that got me into watches at all. This is like my dream watch. I'm not even kidding. This is the one that I wanted when I very first discovered vintage watches. This has a racing pedigree to it, which I've always been a car fan and a race fan. And I wanted one of these things. It was the first vintage watch I ever wanted at all. You can see it's a chronograph. It's a stopwatch that keeps track of time actually in a few different ways here. There's a minutes and hours, a running seconds, and then a seconds hand just for the chronograph. And this one's special. Let's take a look at what we've got here. I ended up finding this one finally. Does it work? A little bit on eBay. I ended up having to overpay for this given its condition, but hey, I have a YouTube channel where I fix watches and I figured it was time for me to do so. It looks like the chronograph is not running properly on this watch. That is not a surprise. And let's see how it's running on the time grapher before we get into this thing. Ooh, that does not look good. You see all those dots are everywhere. We call that a snowstorm. And that is exactly what we don't want to see for a running watch. So I may have gotten quite a project on my hands here. We'll start by taking off the case back. Doesn't want to budge using my normal case back removal ball. So I'm going to have to bust out the big gun here. This is the case back removal tool that is used when it just will not release. Now this one has a very particular case back. You can see it's got the angles going around the outside rather than the normal divots. And that means that I've got to use special attachment here to take it off. I always dislike this type of case back because it's really hard to get a good grip on the outside, but hopefully the tool will do the job here and we can get in and see how that movement's looking. So the way it works is it sort of clamps onto the outside and then I can push down and try to twist it off. Ooh. Wow, yeah, that does not want to budge. Man, I wonder how long it's been since this watch has even been opened. This could be very difficult. Wow, that thing is really held on tight. I cannot get that off of there. Now, I don't want to damage the case back, so I am going to try something that I have read about online. Yeah, that is a socket wrench, and yeah, that's super glue. So, I can't believe I'm actually trying this, especially on this watch, but I cannot get that case back off of there, and I've heard that this works really well. So I'm going to put a bead of super glue on the case back itself, and then I am going to super glue the socket to it. And then theoretically, I can use the socket wrench arm as leverage and it will unlock. People say this works really well. And let's find out once the super glue has dried. Let's see if it's going to work. Oh my God, it's actually working. It's actually happening. Oh boy, you can see some rust and dirt already. No wonder that case back didn't want to come off. Wow. Okay. Well, it looks like this actually worked. Theoretically, I should just be able to use some acetone, fingernail polish remover to take that socket off of the case back. But let's take a look at the movement inside and oh, it's gorgeous. Oh my God, this is my favorite movement of all time. This is a Valjoux 72. I'm just going to have to set the case back aside. We'll deal with that in a little bit. This is a manual wind chronograph movement, and that is perfection. It is beautiful. That means that it is not an automatic watch. You do have to wind it every day, and the chronograph is just the part that acts as a stopwatch. It's used in racing and a bunch of other applications. And take a look at that thing. Oh, it's so beautiful. It's also very intimidating. I've done a few chronographs now. I'm starting to get the hang of it. And I did feel that I was ready to tackle this project. And again, this is like I'll tell the story. This is just like absolutely my dream watch. When I first found out about vintage watches, I found this and I love the racing pedigree and the design and the style and everything. And I wanted to buy one, but they were more expensive than I could afford. And also they're a little smaller. The total size of this chronograph is 36 millimeters, which, you know, is a little bit on the smaller side. And particularly at that time, it was very small. And I was kind of scared that it wouldn't look good on me. And so, oh my God, look at that dial. That is wonderful. You know, the movement's not running very well and the case back was seized up, but it's worth it for that dial. It is perfect, perfectly balanced. I love seeing that. Anyway, and so I ended up not buying the watch because it was too expensive and I was too scared that it would be too small on me. It's funny now because fast forward to now and I'll wear watches way smaller than that. But anyway, let's take off the hands here. We've already taken off the center stack of hands and now we can take off the sub-register hands. We'll start by this minutes counter. Ooh, what is going on there? That should just come off and it really, oh no. Why won't this hand come off? Oh my goodness sakes. Okay, maybe I'm under, nope. I really just cannot get that hand off of there. Let's move over to another and see if it will come off. Yeah, see, that comes off perfectly normally. What is going on here? Same with this one. Why won't this one come off? Wow, I have no idea how to get this hand off of here. It is just stuck on. I don't really have a choice other than to try to just keep using the levers to get underneath it. Oh, there, did it come off now? Nope. Nope. Wow. It broke. Hands are made up of two parts. There's like a tube and then the hand part that sits on top of it, and the tube stayed on. Well, that is going to have to be a problem for a little while down the line because I honestly have no idea how to get that off of there. And I've never had that problem before. So I'm just going to leave it on for now and we'll have to just address it in a little bit. Anyway, but I didn't end up buying the watch because of the price and the size, but it gave me the idea that maybe, just maybe, I could learn how to fix watches so that I could buy one of these and I could restore it and be able to actually afford it. As it turns out, I didn't realize how hard it was to learn how to restore watches of this level. This is a chronograph movement, and this is, you know, this has been my goal for a long time to get to the point of restoring something like this. And this has been what it's all sort of led up to for me. This is very much a full circle moment for me to buy and restore a Hoyer Carrera, the watch that I wanted from the very beginning and never actually got. I'm really glad you're here with me for the journey, especially given how it's gone a little rocky so far. The case back wouldn't come off and one of the hands is already broken. Wouldn't call that a great start, but onward we press with the disassembly. I'm going to do a full restoration on this watch today. I'm not going to be polishing the case because this is what we call, you know, in watch collecting, we call it like an honest example, meaning it was one that was worn by a person, never polished, never looks like hasn't been serviced in forever. And even though those sound like bad things, those are kind of what you want if you're a watch collector, because it means that the watch is in more or less original condition and hasn't been messed around with too much. I'm going to start by taking off some of the chronograph components that go around the outside of the watch. These are springs that hold tension in place. And if I remove them, it'll make removing the parts that they hold tension on that much easier. Another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to be replacing a lot of the screws back into the place where they go. On a regular watch movement, I either know where the screw goes automatically or I can deduce it quite easily. But on a chronograph movement, there's more screws and they're different from each other. And it can make it very difficult to figure out where they go when you go to reassemble the watch. So one common trick that people will use is just to replace the screw back in situ where it goes. And that way, you know, okay, this one goes here. And yes, when you reassemble it, you have to take the screw out, replace the part, and then do it again. But, you know, it is ultimately a time saver over having a big pile of screws and not knowing where each and every one goes exactly. Again, I'm going to continue to remove. Ooh, there's some rust. Yes, this watch definitely had a little bit of water get into it. Hopefully not too bad, though. Oop. Okay, I can take off this spring, and this little tensioner sits on one of the wheels and makes it so that when it clicks over, it stays on exactly one place. And I'll show you why that is in a little bit. Chronographs are interesting because they're quite a bit more complicated than a regular watch. You've got all the components of the watch underneath, and then on top, you've got all these extra parts. And yeah, you have to remember where they go and what they do. And for the most part, I'm starting to get my head around it as a little bit more second nature, but this is definitely one of those projects that I need to keep checking. This is called a column wheel. This is kind of the heart and soul of the chronograph. Many parts interact with this part, and that part will sort of allow certain things to happen at certain times. For example, when the chronograph is running versus when it's not, versus when it's able to be reset versus when it's being reset, these are all controlled by this kind of crown looking thing, this castle looking thing in the middle. They call it a column wheel. It's a complicated part, but it is remarkably simple for the amount of jobs that it has. Another interesting thing about chronographs is that not all of the screws that you see are actually screws. Some of them are what they call eccentrics, and that means that they are in a post into the plate, not into a screw. It's not threaded. And you can turn it, and the screw head part is actually not on center. So it's wider on one part than the other. And this allows you to adjust different components so that they sit slightly closer or slightly further apart from each other. Okay. This is a return hammer, it's called, and we can take that off now. That's the part that's responsible for making everything go back to zero. Another tensioning spring. And let's see if I can just take this pinion out. No. Oh, I know why. I know why. So this is the one that actually has the tube from that hand attached to the other side of it still. So that's why it won't come up. So I am going to have to figure out some way to get that tube off of there. And then also I'm going to have to find a replacement hand somehow. This is stressful stuff. And as I mentioned at the beginning, this is a very expensive watch. Another reason I never ended up getting one was because the price went up even higher than it was too high for me. And then it about doubled. So that put it out of range for me. But now I'm really trying to live my dream here. I bought this one off of eBay. I did overpay for it, but I'm hoping to be able to get it fixed up and it'll still be worth it. Take a look. That's the tube right there from the hand. It's stuck on the bottom of the pinion. That one I couldn't pull away. So yeah, it's just going to have to sit there for right now. Maybe with the dial off, I'll be able to get some type of leverage on that tube and remove it. Whoop. Jumpy, but it's okay. And as I continue the disassembly process, this is one of those things where chronographs have a lot going on. They are complicated, and, you can definitely feel it as the part pile starts to build. The tension does as well. And, I remember, the way that I actually learned how to work on these chronographs was by taking the courses over at watchfix.com from Mark Lovick. And, that was how I learned a lot of the basics when I first started the hobby. And, I recently started a website with my friend Alex called sutcliffehansen.com, where we sell like toolkits to help you get interested or get started, in the hobby, or maybe somebody that that might be interested in it. And, one of the things that kept coming up was, what do they do next? what's next for our customers? And I considered making tutorial videos, but they're really, really, really hard to make well. And Mark's were so good that I just felt like that had already been done. So instead of reinventing the wheel, I got a hold of Mark himself and asked him if he would be game to partner up with us over there. And he said, absolutely, much to my delight. And so we've partnered up with WatchFix. So if you go to Sutcliffe Hansen, you can actually buy the WatchFix tutorials. I've been recommending them before we even partnered up for years, just because they were so good for me. And you can get them along with your toolkit now over at Sutcliffe Hansen. There's a link down below. If you know somebody who maybe would find this hobby interesting, we have entry-level watchmaking starter box. We have mid-level stuff. We have kind of the whole deal for people that just want to dive in. And at the same time, you can buy the awesome tutorials from Mark over at WatchFix. So thanks for checking it out. I really do appreciate it. As we continue the disassembly process here, this is the non-movement side of the watch. This is where the dial goes. And even this has a whole lot going on. But as I've shown, I'm going to be replacing these screws as I go, just so that I know where each one goes. You can see this is the tube of that hand. And I don't know how the heck that got on there so hard that even the levers couldn't take it off. Okay, well, I'm just going to continue the disassembly here, and we will have to deal with that because I can't continue with... Whoa! Easy there, Jumpy. There we go. Looks like it must have had a little bit of tension on it still, and the wheel and it just went flying, but everything looks fine. I can continue to take off these springs. These springs, as you see, are kind of long. They're held in place by a rather large screw, and then they provide tension to a couple of different parts on this side of the movement. This is the keyless works coming apart here. This cover plate goes over the minute wheel and a couple of intermediate wheels as well. As you can see, this movement's very grimy. This is very much in need of a service. Impossible to say how long it's been sitting, but the fact that there was some water ingress and that the case back just would not come off leads me to believe a very long time, which I know it's funny to hear, but that is actually what I wanted when I got this watch. You want it to be original as possible. Even if it does create some problems like the ones that I've already got going here. Okay, we can take off this last part here. Maybe. Oh, I see. It's being held on by this little tensioner. Yeah, that thing holds it in place and makes sure that there's tension on that wheel that kind of keeps it down, but also it means that I couldn't remove it. Now I can, though. And there's a little transfer gear. Yeah, this thing, you can see it's a very long gear, so that it can hit two different wheels at the same time. And I'm just going to leave the tensioner spring in place here. Again, it's another thing to not lose or have to figure out. Okay, let's see if we can get this tube off of here. I feel like if I can get the edge of my lever underneath where the tube meets, I should be able to bring it up. Let's see if I can do so here. Or maybe if I can use the tweezers to kind of lever it off of there. Oh! I think I got it. Where'd it go? I think I got, yes, I did get it. So that whole assembly fell out the bottom. That's what it was attached to. And it looks like it's in okay shape, thankfully. And there's the case tube, or excuse me, the hand tube itself. It just fell over on the side. So I did manage to get that removed. Unfortunately, it's broken. The hand, has come apart. I don't know if I can re-rivet that. It's also painted. So like if you try to re-rivet it, you'll probably ruin the paint on it, in which case it's like, now you're just making more problems for yourself. You can take out the pallet fork. And now we can finally get to the normal stuff. This is just a regular watch movement now with a few bridges. This one covers a couple of the train wheels, the escape wheel and the fourth wheel, namely. There's the escape wheel there. And that's the fourth wheel, though it looks like it wants to stay in place for now. That's okay. And now I can remove the barrel bridge. This has the mainspring barrel under it. It also has a few jewels for some of the train of wheels. As you can see, it's a large bridge. It covers over half of the total main plate. And there we go. The rest of the train of wheels lies underneath, as well as the barrel. The barrel's that big wheel at the top. It actually holds the mainspring, which is the piece of metal that you wind up and then unwind to make a watch run. It's in there. And I can take out the setting lever screw, and then it looks like, so this is actually not a regular screw. That thing is what pushes up against the dial foot that holds it in place. And as you can see, it looked kind of rusted, so I may need to deal with that as well. Let's see how the mainspring looks in here. Sometimes these can get really gunky. No, not bad at all. This actually looks quite good now that I see. Again, this is just a regular manual wind watch underneath all of that other stuff going on. Real simple. I say real simple and then look at my bench. Not so simple. Oh, this isn't good though. There's actually a broken part. Part of the mainspring itself looks like it is broken off. That looks like the end. Yeah, I can actually see right where it goes. Although I do wonder if that part actually matters for the function of it, because it has that little tang that comes down, and that's what keeps it from sliding around the edge of the barrel wall. But the part that broke off may not affect that. And if that's the case, then I may be able to just use the mainspring again. Everything goes into this basket now, and we'll get ready for the watch cleaning machine. I still need to address a few things. So first, I need to de-rust a little bit. So I'm going to use Evaporust here, and I'm going to put that one post in there that really looked like it had gotten the brunt of the rust, and we'll let that sit. It takes about a day for that stuff to work. And now this crystal, this is really tough because this crystal looks like it has some cracks in it, and it's quite damaged. As far as the case goes, it actually looks okay. I do need to take out the pushers. Those are held in kind of by a screw and a spring that go into the pusher itself. So I can remove that by using a screwdriver on the inside here. Whoop. As you can see, it is spring loaded. And again, these pushers are kind of made up of multiple parts, and I can just take each part apart. There's that screw, there's that spring, and then there's the cap on the outside, and I can just clean them all up. Okay, now I can take a look. So the interesting part about the crystal is that there's this inner track. Do you see that it has little markers on it for the minutes, and it's built into where the crystal goes? In fact, there's like a groove on the inside of the crystal that this sits on, and I'm not sure how I'm going to find another one. May need to do a little trial and error there as well. I mentioned this before, but I can use some acetone. This is, again, fingernail polish remover to do this. I need to get this, my socket wrench socket off of the case back. But this stuff's supposed to just dissolve the super glue. Apparently, if you just leave it in here, it'll just magically dissolve it. So let's see. Oh, there it goes. Wow. Yeah, that came right off. And it looks like there's maybe just a shred of glue still on there, but no damage or anything like that. So that actually worked. I'll be honest, that's not going to be my first line of defense, but it did work, and I'll take it for now. Taking a look at the rust on the microscope here, you can see that there is some. For the most part, though, this looks like surface level rust, and it doesn't look like it's gotten into the parts where it's actually damaging them. So that's good news. It could mean that there was just a little bit of water that had gotten in, but nothing too bad. I'm just going to use the pegwood to kind of manually scrape away at the rust that's on the surface here. It'll make it a little bit easier during the cleaning process. Yeah, that's actually cleaning up pretty well. So I'm not that worried about that. Ooh, that is the winding stem. As you can see, it also got rusted. So I'm going to need to put that in with the other de-ruster part to make sure that I can remove some of that rust and make sure that the part is still structurally sound. With that, I can put everything into the watch cleaning machine. This is the first cycle here, and it is just the cleaning followed by 2 rinses. And while the parts get all nice and clean, I did want to say thank you to each and every person who supports me on Patreon. That's how I support this channel. It's patreon.com/wristwatchrevival. And if you like what I'm doing here, this is a way to support me directly. And again, it really does mean a lot to everybody who supports me. Patreon is a place where you can go to support your favorite content creators. And if I happen to be one of them, I'd love to see you over there. Thanks to everybody who supports me. Okay, now we can put the case in the ultrasonic cleaner here while the rest of the watch movement goes through the regular watch cleaning machine. And this is a fairly straightforward process. You know, the water gets heated up and then ultrasonic waves get put through it. It has a kind of a clinical grade detergent that's in there, and that's it. Taking a look, this is the part that was in the de-ruster, in the evaporust. And as you can see, it actually came out pretty good. The rust is completely gone, and the part is mostly still there. And here's the other part that I wanted to check, and that actually looks structurally fine. So I think we may have gotten away with it here as far as the rust goes. And take a look at the beautiful movement all laid out on my bench here. Oh, that is the stuff dreams are made of right there. It looks absolutely gorgeous, although I will say perhaps a little bit scary, but nevertheless, we will carry on and begin the reassembly process. I'm getting excited. You know, this is the part where it all comes back together, and maybe I'll get my dream watch on my wrist after a very, very long time. We'll start by using this mainspring again. I do want to test it. You know, that part that was broken off on the back of the mainspring is a little bit concerning. It technically isn't the part that rubs up against the inside of the wall and sort of makes it so that the mainspring doesn't slide. But I don't like the fact that there was a part missing. That makes me feel like maybe it won't work, but I'm open to just giving it a shot here, because beyond that, the spring looks like it's in very good shape, probably because it's been sitting for so long and hasn't really been used that much. Here's the best part. Oh yeah, very, very nice. It still goes right back into place with no issues. And I can put the barrel arbor into place now as well. This is the part that engages with the inner coil of the spring and lets you wind up the watch. Of course, we're going to be using synthetic oils on this reassembly. This is a medium viscosity one. It's the red one that you can see that I'll be using throughout the reassembly. Use this little plastic tool just to make sure that the barrel is seated properly and everything looks good. I can even put it into place now. I can also replace this stud here. This is the one that I de-rusted. And it, again, doesn't hold anything in place until the dial is inserted. And then the edge of that actually pushes up against the dial foot to hold it in place. So, but for now, I'm just going to put it there so that I remember where it goes and get that out of the way. The ratchet wheel sits on top of the barrel arbor in this movement. So I'll just put it into place, and then I can put a little bit of this blue grease. This is called Mobius 9501. This is a high viscosity grease for metal on metal applications like this one right here. And we can now begin with the train of wheels. We'll start with the escape wheel and kind of move our way backwards up to the mainspring barrel. When you talk about the train of wheels here, the mainspring barrel is actually like the first wheel, and then the rest are kind of numbered after that. This one's the third wheel. The fourth wheel is the one I already put in. The escape wheel is the fifth or last wheel. And then this middle one, I don't know why we don't really call it the second wheel, or at least I don't. It's called the center wheel. But it is definitely the second one in the progression there. And as you can see, what you'll want to do is make sure that the teeth of the wheels are properly meshed like that so that they all sit flat. And once they do get to that point, then you can put this plate back on. Now, this is a bit of a tricky business because you do need to make sure that everything is lined up properly, and that can be difficult to do, especially on such a large plate. So what I like to do is I'll take a little plastic pointer tip. It kind of acts as my extra hand to create just a tiny bit of pressure down so that I can give myself the best shot of these pivots all falling into place. Now on this watch, it's a little tricky because I also have these other two pivots that are covered by this separate bridge over here. The fourth wheel and escape wheel have their own jeweled pivots there, and they all kind of need to be lined up simultaneously to make sure that I'm safe to start screwing down the bridges. So let's put those into place. Oh, getting close, getting close. Yeah, that's starting to look pretty good there. Okay, so now that the parts are all lined up, I can start to screw down these bridges. And again, I'll just be testing them as I go, making sure that everything is properly lined up. Just like that. Now, turning the watch over, I can use a little bit of grease here where the cannon pinion goes down. This is actually on the center wheel, just from the other side. And I can continue the rebuild. The point of this initial stage of the rebuild is to get the watch running again. One good way to think about this is that the regular watch that, that tells time and that runs hopefully as well as we can get it to run, it is the engine for this whole operation. So it will, of course, tell time, but also the power that it makes is what the chronograph, the stopwatch part of the watch, takes from to operate as well. So if the watch isn't running very strong underneath, then it'll have an extra hard time when you start trying to add extra things to it that are taking power from it. So right now, I want to see A, if this watch is going to run, and B, how well we can get it running. Once I'm happy with that, then we'll start putting on all the chronograph parts as well. But in order for us to start the watch running at all, we need to put the keyless works into place because this is how I'm going to wind the watch. See, it all makes sense, right? Really simple. Every time I think that, I look over at the tray that has all the parts in it, and I think, okay, it's not that simple. Okay, now I can put the yoke into place, and it has a spring right there that pushes down on it. And what I'm going to try to do is kind of pull that spring out of the way so that I can seat the yoke properly. Ooh, careful. Because there's this screw right here that needs to hold it into place. So what I'm actually going to do is kind of put this screw into place first, give it a little bit of a start, but not screw it down all the way, because now I'm going to move the yoke into position now that it's being held under a little bit of tension. This just sort of stabilizes it so that it doesn't fly away. See, I can move that spring out of the way and then seat the yoke, and then I'll be able to fully screw it down. And I'm just going to hold it in place while I do that. Whoop. And there we go, just like that. And this is a setting lever spring. This spring actually actuates directly on the setting lever. The setting lever is the thing that dictates whether the watch is in winding mode or hand setting mode. Rather conveniently, they're both done from the same crown. Okay, quick test. There we go. I want to see that jump over. And now I can use some more of the blue Mobius synthetic grease to make sure that any of the high friction parts are taken care of. With that done, now I can take the pallet fork and I'm going to put it in a solvent. and that will clean it. I don't like to put it necessarily in the watch cleaning machine because the adhesive that holds those pallet stones in, it's called shellac. It's actually a naturally occurring adhesive. I believe insects produce it. Kind of weird. But at any rate, and it under the harsh chemicals, it can become a little bit softened, and I prefer not to let that happen. Okay, same deal here. I'm going to put the pallet fork bridge in place and then lightly screw it down, making sure not to overdo it. And that'll allow me to align the pivot of the pallet fork. And then once I'm comfortable with where it's at, I can screw it down all the way. And that's what you're looking for. You want it to jump back and forth kind of on its own power. And once you're happy, you can screw it down. Okay, now we can put on the balance wheel. And this is one of our first big moments of truth. Will the watch kick back to life and run? And then if so, can I get it running really well? We have to align the pivot top and bottom. A quick check to make sure that it looks right. Doesn't want to go just yet. A little kickstart. Okay. Yeah, that does seem like it's going. I haven't really put much of a wind in the watch, and it is running on its own, so that's good news. Although, looking at it, it looks like it's barely going. Huh. I'll try winding it up. It doesn't seem to be doing much. Yeah, you can take a look at the movement, and you can see it's kind of barely running at all. I mean, you can even just tell visually, right, that it doesn't look like it's swinging fully. And you know what that tells me? I think I need to replace the mainspring. I was open to this happening. Not that I'm happy about it, but I'm going to have to order me up a mainspring, and that means undoing a lot of the work that I just did. But that sometimes is part of the deal, and it's a risk I took by trying to reuse this mainspring. So taking a look, and yeah, so that's funny. It's actually all the way broken now. Yeah. All right. Well, this mainspring was definitely compromised by having that one part that was broken off, and it looks like it has completely failed on me here. So I'm going to have to put in a new one. That's okay, though. Putting in a new mainspring is often the right thing to do anyway, and we'll go ahead and put it into place. You can see there's this metal disc around the outside, and that kind of holds it in place until you're ready to install it, like I'm going to do right here. Going to try to kind of hold it down with my... Whoa! Oh, goodness sakes. Well, there's the mainspring. And, well, I guess I can take a moment now to show you what it's supposed to look like on that end. That is what it's supposed to look like. And I guess I get to use my mainspring winders again. I didn't notice, but that mainspring actually had two of the metal discs that's supposed to hold it together, and it's only supposed to have one. And that made it rather unstable upon installation. So a quick use of my mainspring winders and another quick installation. And that is what you want to see. Now, that is a properly running watch. In fact, let's get it lubricated, oiled up, and we'll get it on the time graph or the timing machine to see how well it's actually running. A small amount of oil is needed for each of these pivots. It's interesting because you'd think that more oil would be better, but it's actually not. You're actually aiming for quite a small amount of oil on these pivots, just enough to lubricate where the pivot is, but not to overdo it. Of course, we also need to take care of the balance jewels. These are arguably the most important ones when it comes to performance because they are designed to suspend a small droplet of oil directly above the pivot. And if they don't do that, then they're usually dry, as you see here. And that means that they are sort of working against the watch a little bit. You know, the oil, when it dries up, this modern synthetic oil is pretty good. I'm still going to use a piece of pegwood here just to gently manually clean the surface of that jewel because some of that oil can still be stuck on. But for the most part, when the oil dries up, it kind of becomes the opposite of what you want it to be. Instead of a lubricant, it can actually attract little bits of dust and debris and make it a little bit more of a, an abrasive. Okay, one little droplet of oil right in the middle of that flat jewel, and now I can simply replace the top with the other side here. Just like that, and now I can put it back into place in the actual watch movement. Whoop, kind of dropped it there. No, that's not it. There we go. I need it to fall all the way down into its seat. That's how these shock protection systems work. They are brilliantly designed, by the way. That brass part that I'm reinstalling here, that's a spring, and it means that your watch is much less likely to break. Okay, let's put it on the time grapher and see how it does after some adjusting. Woo! Whoa, this thing has some life left in it, no doubt about it. 291 degrees of amplitude, 0 seconds a day, and 0.1 of beat error. That is more or less perfect. That's about as good as I'm going to be able to get it. And it means we have a good, strong foundation to rebuild the chronograph part of the movement back on. So let's do that now. Now, this is the scary part. This is the part I have less experience with, but I've done it before, and I'm getting better at it. And my comfort level's starting to get there. Plus, there's really no other way but forward. So onward we go. I'll start by putting this column wheel into place. As you can see, it's a monster that holds it into place. And I'll just make sure that it spins freely before all of the tension gets put on it. And as I mentioned, you can see I'm going to take off the screw that was sitting there. Again, these are the ones that I left in place. And then I can go about replacing the things that they hold on. And this is, again, just a practice thing that you can do just to make it a little less likely that you make a mistake or get stuck, and it ends up being a bit of a time saver. As you can see, this spring acts directly on that column wheel. So before tightening the spring all the way down, I'll make sure that it's intact, and now I can screw it all the way down, and then I can even use a little bit of the blue grease here where it interacts with that wheel. Well, that's a little too much actually, but I could use some Rodico to clean it up. Anytime you overdo it with the oil, it's a good idea to make sure to clean it up. So this is the chronograph running seconds runner. Basically, this is what the seconds hand that goes around when you start the stopwatch, this is what it attaches to. And this is, of course, also how you reset it, get it back to 0. I'll show you that as well. And this one displays the minutes. And as you can see, there's a little bridge here that holds on both of these. It's got a very pleasing shape. You could mention, I should mention, you can see those jewels in the middle. Those are ruby. They are synthetic, but they are chemically identical to rubies. And they are very, very hard. They're also brittle. Little tiny bit of oil on the top of those. Again, this is the lightest viscosity oil. It's called Mobius 9010, and I use it for these pivots. And now what I'm going to do is something a little bit tricky. So there's a thing called a heart cam that you can see in the middle there, and it requires a very thin amount of oil applied to the surface of the cam. So the way I was taught to do this by Mark Levick is that you kind of push it along using the oiler to create just the tiniest, thinnest amount on there. And there's the hammer, which will actually slam up against that cam. And so that's why you need to have that lubrication on there. Now, I haven't installed the hammer yet, but I will. Okay, I'm trying to make sure that these, there we go, get meshed together properly. As you can see right now, this part is just loose, but it will be under tension, you know, as we continue the reassembly. Now I'm putting a little bit of grease around the outside of that column wheel because it will also be actuated upon. That part of it will, I should say. And here's the spring. Careful. One step at a time. And just make sure that this is seated properly. There we go. And then I can screw it down all the way. And now you can see that that is no longer loose. It has the spring tension on it that will keep it in place. Again, removing the screws that I had replaced there so that I can replace the parts. This part is called the coupling clutch, and it's going to go over an eccentric. If you look at the very top there, that is not a screw. That is one of those things that I mentioned before that just has a post on it, but when you turn it, it actually changes where this thing sits. And that's the primary way that you can make an adjustment to a chronograph like this. I can screw this into place. Again, it kind of acts like a hinge, you know, where like it has some freedom of movement, but not enough to just go anywhere it wants. There we go. See that? See how it can move back and forth a little bit? Now I can put the operating lever in place. This is the thing that you actually push on to start and stop the chronograph. Well, the pusher pushes on it when you push it, as it were. This part acts kind of like as a brake. It gets in the way. So it's interesting because, you know, the chronograph has a few different modes, right? It has where it's just off, but then it has where it's running. Then you can hit the chronograph again to stop it, but it actually is still, you know, it's not running, but it's in the running state where if you hit the start again, it'll just pick up again from where you left off. And then you can hit the reset button on the bottom to move everything back to zero. But for example, if the chronograph is running, you don't want to be able to let somebody hit the reset button and have everything go slamming into each other, right? So there's little breaks, little ways that it prevents itself from being able to do certain things in certain conditions. You can see things are starting to come together little bit by little bit. A little bit of medium viscosity oil for this post. And this is the return hammer. So this is the thing that resets. The ends of this are what actually push up against those cams, those heart cams I mentioned before, where they're smooth and rounded like a heart, so that if a flat surface hits it, it will actually rotate until it hits the top of the heart. And that is meant to be the place at which the hands are at zero, right? Like the seconds hand is pointing straight up and the minute recording hand is at zero. Again, just a little bit of medium viscosity oil where these two parts meet up. You just don't want really ever to have just straight up metal on metal. That was a little too much oil though. Again, I'll just use the Rodico to clean it away. This part's a little bit tricky to install. I don't know if I was supposed to do this first, maybe. But I'm going to do what I've been doing, which is to install it most of the way down and then kind of position it in place. And then I'll finish screwing it in after I'm confident that it goes where it's supposed to go and that it's been lubricated like that. Now this is an extended wheel, meaning that this one actually goes on the top of that spike that comes off of the pivot. And what I'm looking for here is that this wheel and the one that it touches up against there on the right are aligned, up and down aligned. You see how they mesh up together there? I want to make sure that one of them isn't significantly higher or lower than the other. I do need to do a little bit of backtracking here with the, because I need to put on this part that I realized now actually goes kind of in between two parts that I've already got on here. And so I'm just going to have to show a little bit of patience and undo some work that I've done here. But, you know, I've got all the time I need, right? Like I'm not sitting here under some, crushing deadline or whatever. I can just take my time. And if I forget to put a part in, or if I realize after that it would have been better to put it in first, I can just do that. If the mainspring doesn't work that I was hoping would work, I can just fix that too, which is what we had to do. I'm more determined about getting this thing running right than I am about any other temporary thing. Because as I mentioned before, this is kind of a dream watch for me, and I want to be able to wear this thing for years and years. I'll be honest with you, when I first started with the hobby, I was skeptical that I would ever be able to get to this point, to be able to work on something like this, and to actually be able to have a shot at bringing back to life something that was, neglected at the least. And it's really exciting. I know it sounds weird because like I'm sitting at my bench, I'm working on a watch, like how exciting could it be? And the answer is really exciting. It's a thrill to work on stuff like this, and I absolutely love it. You can put the balance back into place. I'll take it off when I'm working on these parts of the movement just for safety's sake, because I'm, installing a bunch of parts and I don't need the balance sitting there. Now take a look at how this works. If you look, these two wheels are spinning, but the wheel in the middle doesn't until I do this. That's simulating starting the chronograph. And do you see how that chronograph runner wheel in the middle is now spinning? That's because the chronograph is now engaged. It is working. But that doesn't mean that it's perfect. In fact, take a look. The watch just stopped. Now watch what happens when I disengage the chronograph. Boom, it starts running again. And I know why. This isn't anything to panic about. The reason is because of this. So if you look right here, these two wheels are enmeshed with each other over on the left. But when I start the chronograph, which I just did right there, now this wheel is meant to meet up with that chronograph runner wheel. And if they get pushed too close together where there's no room for that wheel to go, it will slow down and even stop the movement. Now take a look here. You can see, by the way, the bottom of the heart cam there. What this wheel is here is this is an intermediate wheel that slides over to this. And then you see this little post on the end. This is actually the runner that keeps track of minutes. And if you see that triangle, watch what happens when it hits the tooth of that. Boom, it moves it over 1 notch, and that is 1 minute recorded on the front. This is what it looks like over here, and that's what that springed part does, is it makes sure that it only goes one spot. And the thing is, that's working actually quite well, because that little finger, that pointer that went by, if it grabs too much of it, it will turn it over by perhaps more than 1 notch. If it doesn't grab enough, then it won't get turned over all the way. And so there's some adjustments that you can make there as well. But this one looks like it's actually working quite well. It recorded exactly the 1 minute, exactly how I'd hope it would record it. That is displayed, by the way, on the front side of the dial. One of those sub-registers, in fact, it happens to be the one that the hand got broken on. That one is meant to tick over once per minute, because if you think about it, when you start a chronograph, that big center seconds wheel starts to go around, but after it goes around once and it's been a minute, how do you know that a minute's passed, or 2 or 3 or 5, right? What if you're making spaghetti and you want to cook the noodles for 10 minutes or something? How do you know how many minutes have gone by? You don't want to have to stare at it and write it down. So they thought of that. And what they do is they have a minutes recording wheel. And then there's also one for hours, that is hours of the chronograph having gone by, so that you can actually record, straight up for up to 12 hours. It'll keep going further, but then it will circle back around and it'll say 12 and it'll go back to 1 as far as how many hours has gone by. So, you will have to track it a different way at that point. But this thing will track hours, minutes, and seconds for up to 12 hours straight. We're back on the dial side of the movement now, just getting everything together. There's some of the parts of the chronograph recording system are on this side, including that hour recorder. There's also just the good old keyless works, which we've already put into place. This little extended pinion thing, this is actually part of that hour recording. Just make sure that it's seated properly, and then I can loosen up the little tensioner spring here just to move it out of the way so that I can put this wheel and this little bridge back into place. Yeah, like that. As I found out during disassembly, this one is held under a bit of tension as well. So I'll try to be careful when putting it back together, as that is one of the parts that kind of jumped away on me. This is a shouldered screw, and I'll use a little bit of lubrication there just to make sure that where it meets up with this piece of metal, that it has a little bit less friction there. There we go. And the spring kind of goes along the outside of it. And once again, I can just use this big old screw to hold it into place. This thing's really starting to come together. I've got a running watch. The chronograph seems to be going. What am I worried about? I'm still worried about the crystal. I'm still worried about the hands. I was able to find a set of hands, but we're going to have to see if they're going to fit. I've been doing some thinking about that hand that broke off also. I still haven't figured out what's going on with it, but I do have a theory brewing, because if you look closely when I took it off, that hand was much brighter than the other hands. It was seemingly newer. I'm wondering if it was a replacement. Okay, this cover plate kind of goes over most of this part of the movement. It also provides a base for the dial to sit on. And as you can see, if I can just line up the underhole there and hold it in place, then I can screw it down. Boy, this is quite a journey. These chronographs have a lot going on. That's why I set it kind of as my goal. My watch repair end game, if you will. Still kind of can't believe I get to work on watches like this. There we go. Yeah, I can put the hour wheel in place. And it gets a washer too, to make sure it stays held down. Now I can grab the dial and replace it. Dial's probably the star of the show here. It's in really, really good shape. And it has a beautiful balanced layout that partly is due to the fact that the watch is relatively small. Take a look at that. It's gorgeous. And we can put the hands back on now. So I'll start by the running seconds hand. This hand actually just continues to turn. It's kind of to let you know that the watch is running, because otherwise none of the hands will go unless the chronograph is actually running. And as you can see, it's already started to turn. And then this one is the hour recording hand that I mentioned before. So once the chronograph is running, once every hour, that will tick one spot forward, which means that I do need to have it lined up with the 12 to start with, because that's where it's going to sit the vast majority of the time. And just a gentle push to put it into place. Now, this is the replacement hand that I got for this. And let's see if we can make it, if it'll work. As you can see, it also is a lot whiter than the other two, just like the one that it's replacing. So I guess I get to keep that the same. Normally you'd want them to all be the same size. Now this one does need to be lined up at the very top there, and it does seem to be giving me a little bit of trouble. Okay, that might work. Let's see if I can push it into place. No. Now, what is going on? Yeah, it doesn't, this feels like this hand, the pipe for this one is too small. And the way I'm going to solve that problem is by using a smoothing broach. So this is a tool you can use, it's just a hardened metal, and it's very, very thin. And what you can do is twist it back and forth to open up that little tiny hole in that just enough so that it'll fit. And this actually gives me an idea. I wonder if somebody tried to replace this hand before and didn't do what I just did. They often will come that way from the factory, like a little bit too small, and you kind of have to open them up a little bit. And I think a person just forced it on there and made it basically impossible to take off. Because look, just that little tiny opening and boom, it goes right into place. That's all it took. And of course, the other hand really didn't give that luxury. The other thing that could have happened, because that hand is over towards the side where the crown is, and that's where the water got in, is that there could have been a little bit of corrosion on that hand that actually kind of welded it into place, if you will. I will never know, but these are my theories. I think normally it would kind of bug me to have that one hand be stark white like that, but it actually just matches up with what the watch looked like when it came to me. So it's kind of keeping it historically accurate in a way. Not really bugging me for some reason. Maybe I'm just smitten with this watch. This is the chronograph seconds hand there that goes in the middle. That's the one that will start turning once you hit start on the chronograph hand. Let's see if it'll actually do it here. Yeah, there we go. And then the big moment of truth is when I stop it and now reset it. It should go right back up to 12. And I really hope it does, because it means I did everything right on the other side. Oh, there it goes. Very nice. So that's looking good. We can set that aside now and focus on the case. Now, again, I had to kind of get creative here. I could not find an original crystal for this, but I noticed that the inner bezel on the crystal has a groove in it for the little minute counting ring here. And there's a certain type of crystal called an armored crystal that has a gap like that. And you can just take the armored part out. That was that silver part that I took out. And then I think I can maybe just press this into place and it will hold that inner bezel. It's a little bit of a tricky operation, I think. But this is going to be my best shot because I can't reuse the crystal I had. It's too cracked. And I'm worried that water's going to get in. So let's give it a shot and see if this idea will work. It's not a perfect fit for that ring, and it makes it a little bit tricky to try to keep it lined up and seated properly. But I think I can maybe pull it off. So what I'm going to do is use my Rober crystal press here, and I'm going to use one of the plastic dies that goes on it, because this type of crystal is just pressed into place rather than stretched out and, you know, doing the way I normally do it. And I think if everything's lined up, let's just see. Yeah, I felt it click into place. That is what I would expect from this type of crystal normally. And we'll take a look at that in a second, because first I need to put on these pushers. These, again, have been cleaned and put through the watch cleaning machine as well. And as you can see, you just put the post through, and then I can put the spring and the cap around the other side. In fact, I'll just kind of hold it in place with my hand and then apply pressure from the inside with the screwdriver. And there we go. A quick test. Yeah, looks like it's working just fine. So that's good. Now take a look at the case after it's been fully assembled with the movement ring in there. And it's looking pretty good, actually. So I think my idea may have worked. It would have been easier just to find an original part, but that can be quite difficult for old watches like this. I couldn't find one anywhere. Okay, now we can reinstall the movement itself. Oh, I'm getting so excited. It's like chills right now. I have waited a very, very, very long time to get a watch like this. And to think that I'm kind of adding to its history for me as well is just really, really cool. I can put the case clamp into place. You can see this case has definitely seen better days. This watch was used. Somebody absolutely wore this a lot. And I love that about it. It gives that case that patinaed look, but not too bad. You know, it's not beaten up so that you're not excited about it. It's just, you can tell that it's been loved. A brand new rubber gasket for the outside will help with any future water issues. The one that was on there got completely destroyed when I took the case back off. Ideally, this case back will come off a little bit easier than it did. No super glue needed, hopefully this time. And I've got a watch strap that I've actually had for years and years for a different Hoyer watch. And I'm going to put that on here because I think it's going to be kind of the perfect style for it. It's a racing strap. And this is the type of strap that they would have originally put on these watches, a similar style at least. And take a look at the finished product. This thing is absolutely stunning. Let's give it a quick try as well. We can start the chronograph and let it run around for a minute to make sure that it actually ticks over on that minute as well. Right here, take a look at the right-hand side and boom, right over to a minute. That's exactly what we wanted to see. And then I can stop it and then restart it, and it should go all back to 0. And it does. It's actually working, and it is stunning. I have never been so thrilled with the restoration as I am with this one. This is honestly, just to me, an underrated, beautiful, awesome manual chronograph from the 1960s from Hoyer, and I can't believe that I actually get to own this watch now. Unbelievable stuff. Thank you so much for coming on this journey with me. I know this was a big, long, complicated one, but I'm really glad you're here for this kind of full circle moment for me and for this channel, and hopefully for you as well. If you want to find me on Instagram, I am wristwatch_revival. I'd love it if you come over and say hi. And with that, we'll see you next time.